Parents refused to help me go to college, saying you won't be successful anyway. But years later, expected me to hand over $130,000 for my sister's wedding. I, 32 male, grew up in this dingy blue-collar town about an hour outside of Chicago. The kind of place where the main employer is a factory that's always threatening to close down, and everyone knows exactly what car you drive and who you dated in high school. It was me, my parents, and my older brother Jake, 34 male, who was just a year and a half older than me, but might as well have been a different species according to my parents. We lived in this rundown split level that my dad, 58 male, was always promising to renovate, but never did. The carpet was this gross beige color from the 80s, and the kitchen had these hideous yellow countertops that Mom swore would come back in style. Dad worked as a shift manager at the local manufacturing plant, the same place his father had worked before him, while Mom, 56 female, ran this sad little craft store downtown that barely broke even, but gave her something to brag about at church. "I'm a small business owner," she'd say, as if selling yarn and scrapbooking supplies made her Elon Musk. From literally day one, Jake was the golden child. I'm not exaggerating or being dramatic. There are actual baby pictures where he's front and center while I'm barely visible in the background. Like this one family photo where Jake is sitting on Dad's shoulders while I'm standing off to the side, half cropped out of the frame. This wasn't an accident. It was literally the framed photo they chose to put on the mantle. Jake would half-ass his way to a C+, and my parents would take him out for ice cream to celebrate his improvement. Meanwhile, I'd bring home straight A's, and my dad would just grunt and ask if I'd mowed the lawn yet. "School comes easy to you," he'd say, like that somehow made my achievements less impressive. "Jake has to work for it." Yeah, he had to work for it, because he spent more time playing video games than studying, but apparently that made him the hard worker. Make it make sense. I still remember standing in our dingy living room clutching my regional math competition trophy while my parents were losing their shit over Jake making the football team as a third-string linebacker. "Jake, honey, this is fantastic. You're going to be the star of the team. You're just so athletic." My mom was practically having a stroke from excitement. Nobody even glanced my way, despite the fact that I was literally the first student from our school to ever win that competition. When I finally said, "Hey, did you guys see my trophy?" my mom just said, "That's nice, honey. Put it in your room. We need the coffee table space for Jake's football schedule." This pattern defined my entire childhood. Jake got a used Chevy for his 16th birthday, while I got a bus pass for mine. He wore American Eagle and Hollister clothes while I shopped at Goodwill and thrift stores. Every family gathering became the Jake Show, with my dad telling everyone Jake's got a shot at a sports scholarship, and he's dating the head cheerleader. I'd sit there with my straight A's, my chess club presidency, and my perfect SAT scores, completely invisible. My cousin Ryan, 32 male, was the only one who ever noticed this bullshit. We were the same age, and he'd come over and just shake his head at how my parents treated me. "Dude, this is so messed up," he'd whisper. When Jake would get praised for remembering to take out the trash while I was cooking dinner for the whole family and getting zero acknowledgement, Ryan was the one person who actually saw what was happening, and having just that one person who validated my experience probably kept me sane during those years. I learned to just fade into the background during these moments. It wasn't that I was some loser. I had excellent grades, was captain of the debate team, and had already built my own computer from scraps I collected from the local electronics repair shop, where I volunteered after school. Some old dude who ran the place actually taught me how to solder and repair circuit boards when I was like 14, and I was fixing people's computers by sophomore year. But in our house, my achievements were just that nerdy stuff, while Jake's sub-mediocre existence was treated like he was curing cancer. I remember my mom telling me once while I was helping her carry groceries, "Tommy, you should really think about practical career options like working at the plant with your dad. There's nothing wrong with honest blue-collar work." The way she said honest made it sound like anything else I might want to do was somehow a scam. Meanwhile, Jake was being encouraged to follow his dreams of becoming a sports agent, despite having the business acumen of a potato, and literally having to ask me how to calculate percentages when he was 17. In my junior year, I won a statewide programming competition that came with a $500 prize and a feature in the local newspaper. You know what my parents did? They put the newspaper in the recycling bin and asked if I could loan the $500 to Jake because he needed new gear for football camp. "You don't really need that money right now," Dad said. "Jake has a real opportunity here." I gave him the money because what choice did I have? I never saw a penny of it back, of course. Looking back now, That constant belittlement left deep scars that took years to heal. But sometimes, the people who try to bury you don't realize you're a seed. My family had absolutely zero clue how their years of favoritism would eventually come back to bite them in the ass. If you're planting crops of resentment for 18 years, don't be surprised when you end up harvesting a field of fuck you. I'll never forget the day Jake got his college acceptance letter. It was to some mediocre state school with a 98% acceptance rate, but from my parents' reaction, you'd think he'd gotten into Harvard with a full presidential scholarship, and they were throwing in a Ferrari on the side. The entire house went into full celebration mode. Mom made Jake's favorite meal, expensive steaks. Dad brought home a fancy bottle of champagne, which was a lot for our family, and they spent the entire evening planning Jake's amazing future. They invited the neighbors over, called the extended family, and Dad was practically doing cartwheels around the living room. Our brilliant boy is going to make connections and become a big success. Mom couldn't stop gushing. We've been saving for this moment since you were born, sweetheart. Dad kept bragging about how Jake was college material and how they had managed to save up nearly $40,000 for his education fund. $40,000. I had no idea they had that kind of money stashed away. They had always acted like we were barely making ends meet whenever I needed anything. I sat there pushing my food around my plate, trying to imagine what my own celebration would be like next year. Spoiler alert, there wasn't one. When my college acceptance letters came in, I had worked my ass off. I maintained a perfect 4.0 GPA, was president of 3 clubs, volunteered 200 plus hours at the local library, teaching senior citizens how to use computers, and even took community college courses on weekends to show initiative. I built an app that helped organize the school's tutoring program, which got me featured in a couple of tech blogs. My hard work paid off. I got accepted to MIT with a partial scholarship for computer engineering. I was over the moon. This was my ticket out of our town, my chance to actually make something of myself. I was so excited that I rushed home to tell my parents. The acceptance letter clutched in my hand, barely able to contain myself. But the response was like a bucket of ice water. MIT? My mom laughed with this dismissive snort that made my stomach drop. Tommy, be realistic. We can't afford to send you there even with a scholarship. Besides, you're not really cut out for a place like that. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. But what about all the money you saved for college? You're paying for Jake's tuition and housing and even buying him a new laptop. Dad shifted uncomfortably in his recliner, not even bothering to mute the basketball game. That's different. Jake is going somewhere reasonable and he has a clear athletic and social path. You? Those tech schools are expensive and you'd probably drop out anyway. You're more suited for practical work. The plant is always hiring, and with my recommendation, you could start at $15 an hour. The unfairness of it hit me like a physical blow. So you saved money for Jake's college, but nothing for mine? Even though you've known for years that I wanted to study computer science? Mom had the audacity to look offended. We didn't think you were serious about all that computer stuff. We thought it was just a phase. Besides, Jake needs more support than you do. You're smart, you'll figure something out. I was desperate. I could work while studying, I pleaded. Just help me with the first year. We could get a loan. I'll pay back every penny with interest. I'll even sign a legal contract. We never borrow money on principle, Mom said with this cold voice I'll never forget. We don't do loans and we're not going to start now. You need to accept your limitations and be practical. Dad finally looked away from the TV. Look, the plant is a good steady job with benefits. You could work your way up like I did. In 15 years, you could be making $22 an hour with full dental. That's nothing to sneeze at. I stood there, the acceptance letter crumpling in my hand as I clenched my fist. 15 years to make $22 an hour? That's your big dream for me? It's called being realistic, Dad snapped. Not everyone gets to chase silly dreams. Someone has to do actual work in this world. That night, I punched a hole in my bedroom wall and then carefully patched it so they wouldn't have another reason to call me irresponsible. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, tears of frustration burning in my eyes. It wasn't just about the money. It was the realization that they had never believed in me, had never even considered that I might be worthy of the same investment they had made in Jake. By morning, though, determination had replaced my anger. I called the only person who had ever actually believed in me, my Uncle Rob, 51 male, my dad's younger brother, who had always been the black sheep of the family for moving away and starting his own business. Uncle Rob, I need your advice. I explained everything over the phone, trying not to sound as desperate as I felt. I can't just give up on MIT. This is my one shot. There was a long pause on the line. Those idiots, he finally said, and I could hear the disgust in his voice. I always knew they played favorites, but this is on another level. Listen, I don't have college money sitting around, but I do have something else to offer. How about you come work for my tech consulting business? Real work, real pay. We can figure out online classes or community college transfers later. Uncle Rob had built a successful IT infrastructure company in Philadelphia after teaching himself programming. He'd left our hometown right after high school, much to my grandparents' disappointment. My dad always dismissed his success as lucky timing during the tech boom, which I later realized was just jealousy. Uncle Rob had made something of himself without following the family's expected path, and that was unforgivable in my dad's eyes. Are you serious? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Dead serious. I need someone young who can learn fast, and from what you've told me over the years, you've already taught yourself more than most of my entry-level hires know. The job comes with an apartment above my garage. It's small, but it's yours rent-free if you want it. I didn't even hesitate. When can I start? How fast can you pack? I spent that evening packing everything I cared about into 2 duffel bags and a backpack. It wasn't much. Some clothes, my ancient laptop, a few books, and the small collection of programming awards I'd won over the years. I didn't tell my parents about my plans until the next morning when Ryan showed up in his beat-up Honda to drive me to Philadelphia. When I told my parents I was moving to Philadelphia to work for Uncle Rob, they lost their minds. "You're throwing your life away on some pipe dream," Mom screamed, her face getting that blotchy red color it always did when she was angry. "Rob will fire you within a month when he realizes you're not cut out for that kind of work." Dad was even worse. "You ungrateful little shit. After everything we've done for you? We raised you, fed you, clothed you, and this is how you repay us? By running off to be a burden on my brother?" My cousin Ryan helped me load my stuff into his car while my parents continued their guilt trip. Jake just stood in the doorway with this confused look on his face, like he couldn't comprehend why I wouldn't want to work at the plant like Dad. "Don't come back when you fail," Mom said, as a parting shot when I was walking out the door. "Don't think you can just crawl back here when Rob gets tired of your attitude." "I won't," I promised. And I meant it. As Ryan and I drove away, I could see my parents in the rearview mirror, standing on the porch with matching expressions of anger and disbelief. That image stayed with me for years. The moment I chose myself over their limited vision of who I could be. "You're doing the right thing," Ryan said, after we'd been driving in silence for a while. "They were never going to let you be anything more than Jake's shadow." He was right, and hearing him say it out loud made something settle in my chest. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't ungrateful. I was just refusing to accept their unfair limitations. "Thanks for this," I told him. "I won't forget it. Just remember me when you're rich and famous," he joked. "I want tickets to your TED Talk." We laughed, and for the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. The road ahead was uncertain, but at least it was mine to choose. Uncle Rob's apartment turned out to be a converted attic with slanted ceilings that I constantly hit my head on, but it was paradise compared to my old room. I had my own bathroom, a kitchenette, and most importantly, complete privacy. No one barging in to tell me I was wasting time on my computer or asking me to do Jake's homework for him. The job wasn't glamorous, mostly setting up networks for small businesses and troubleshooting when things went wrong. But Uncle Rob paid me fairly and taught me everything he knew. He was the mentor I'd always craved but never had. When I solved a particularly tricky problem for a client, he'd actually acknowledge it. "Good work, Tommy," he'd say, and those simple words meant more to me than all the forced "good job" comments I'd gotten from teachers who were surprised the quiet kid knew anything. At night, I took online courses, building my skills and working toward a degree. Uncle Rob let me use the company's high-speed internet and even bought me a better laptop when he saw me struggling with my ancient one. "Consider it an investment in my company's future," he said when I tried to refuse. After 6 months, I had saved enough to enroll in community college part-time, taking classes that I knew would transfer to a 4-year program eventually. It wasn't MIT, but it was a step in the right direction. Meanwhile, I heard through Ryan that Jake had dropped out of college after 3 semesters. Apparently, the sports management dream died when he realized it involved actual work and not just hanging out with athletes. He moved back home and got a job at the plant through Dad's connections. My parents never mentioned his failure during our increasingly rare phone calls, which usually consisted of Mom asking when I was coming to visit and me inventing excuses not to. 4 years flew by. I completed my bachelor's in computer science while continuing to work for Uncle Rob. Our business expanded as I brought in new ideas and modernized our services. I created a proprietary security system that attracted bigger clients, and by year 5, Uncle Rob made me a junior partner with profit sharing. "You've earned this," he said, handing me the partnership agreement. "You've grown this business as much as I have these past few years." Then came a major break. One of our clients, Datacrest Solutions, was so impressed with the security system I designed that they offered me a job as their cybersecurity team lead. The salary was double what I was making with Uncle Rob, with stock options and full benefits. I was torn about leaving Uncle Rob's company, but he was the one who insisted I take the opportunity. Take it, Uncle Rob told me without hesitation. This is your chance to really make it big. I'll always be here. But this is the kind of opportunity that doesn't come twice. The move to Datacrest launched my career into the stratosphere. I led projects, built teams, and eventually caught the attention of the executive leadership. 3 years in, I was promoted to Chief Information Security Officer with a salary package north of $220,000 plus stock options that would eventually be worth much more. I bought a sleek downtown condo with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view of the city skyline. I drove a Tesla Model S that I paid for in cash. I dated ambitious women who had their own successful careers. I traveled internationally for work, gave talks at industry conferences, and built a reputation as an innovator in cybersecurity. I sent my uncle and cousin expensive gifts for holidays. They'd been there for me when it mattered. Uncle Rob tried to refuse the first few times, saying he didn't need anything. But I insisted. You believed in me when no one else did, I told him. Let me show my appreciation. For Ryan's wedding, I paid for their honeymoon in Hawaii. It was the least I could do for the guy who had helped me escape. But my parents? They got generic Christmas cards. No gifts, no money, no details about my life. They didn't deserve to share in my success. The few times I did speak to them on the phone, they'd ask how that computer job was going, as if I was still fixing printers in someone's basement. I kept my responses vague and changed the subject quickly. Then came the text message from Ryan that changed everything. Dude, you'll never believe what happened. Jake got fired for showing up late too many times, and your dad got laid off when the plant downsized. Your mom's craft store finally went under too. They're telling everyone you owe them help because family sticks together. I was looking at this text in my corner office when an unknown number called my phone. I answered without thinking. Tommy, it's your mother. My blood ran cold. How did you get this number? Your cousin Ryan. Thank goodness he stayed in touch with us. Unlike some people. Listen, we need to talk. Your father and I are coming to Philadelphia next weekend. We'd like to see your place. Before I could respond, she continued. We'll be there Saturday at noon. Text me the address. Then she hung up. I was so stunned I just sat there staring at my phone. The audacity was breathtaking. After nearly a decade of minimal contact, they were inviting themselves to my home? I texted Ryan, did you give them my address too? His response was immediate. Hell no. Just the number because your mom was crying. Sorry, man, I was weak. Don't give them your address. But some sick curiosity made me text my address to my mother. I wanted to see their faces when they realized what I'd become without them. I wanted them to see the life I'd built, the one they had been so certain I couldn't have. When Saturday arrived, I made sure my place looked like something out of a luxury magazine. I even hired a cleaning service to make it perfect and ordered fancy pastries from the upscale bakery down the street. At exactly noon, the intercom buzzed. When my parents walked into my apartment, their expressions were everything I'd hoped for. Mom's eyes darted from the panoramic windows to the modern furniture to the original artwork on the walls. Dad stood awkwardly in the entrance, looking smaller and older than I remembered, his factory jacket worn at the elbows. This is quite something, Mom managed, running her finger along my quartz countertop as if checking for dust. You must be doing very well for yourself. I am, I replied simply, offering them seats on my Italian leather sofa. They sat down gingerly, as if afraid they might break something. They exchanged glances before Mom cleared her throat. Well, we actually have some news. Jake is engaged to Melissa. You remember Melissa from high school? The head cheerleader? I didn't, but I nodded anyway. High school was a lifetime ago, and I had deliberately forgotten most of it. The wedding is planned for 6 months from now, Mom continued, her voice getting that familiar fake sweet tone I remembered from childhood. We've offered to pay for the venue and reception, as is traditional. Dad shifted uncomfortably. But with my layoff and everything else, well, the total we need is around $75,000. I nearly laughed out loud. $75,000 for Jake's wedding? In our hometown? The average house there cost less than $130,000. What kind of wedding were they planning? Melissa has certain expectations, Mom explained quickly. Her family is well respected in the community. Her father is planning to run for mayor next year. We committed before we realized, and now, she trailed off, looking at me meaningfully. Now you need $75,000, I finished for her. We wouldn't ask if we weren't desperate, Dad finally spoke up. We've already taken a second mortgage on the house. And you want me to give you the money? I said flatly. Loan, Dad interjected. We're asking for a loan. We'll pay you back. We'll even sign papers. Like when I wanted to go to MIT, I interrupted. When I begged you for help? When I offered to sign a legal document promising to pay you back? Mom's face flushed. That was different. Different how? Because it was me asking? Because you told me you don't borrow money on principle? Tommy, be reasonable, Dad started, leaning forward with his hands clasped between his knees. This is Jake's future we're talking about. Melissa comes from an important family. This connection could help all of us. Reasonable? Like you were reasonable when you told me I wasn't cut out for tech? When you suggested I work at the plant instead of pursuing my dream? When you called me an ungrateful shit for accepting Uncle Rob's help? That's not fair, Mom protested, her voice rising. We were just looking out for you. We didn't want you to get your hopes up for something that might not work out. No, what's not fair is that you're only here because you need something from me. You haven't spoken to me in years except for obligatory holiday calls. You didn't even know where I worked until today. And now you want $75,000? I walked to the door and opened it. I don't loan money on principle. I believe that's a family tradition, isn't it? Mom's face turned red with anger. How dare you throw our words back at us after everything we've done for you? We raised you. We put a roof over your head. We fed you. You did the legal minimum required of parents. I cut her off. And you never let me forget it was an obligation, not a choice. Please leave now. Dad stood up, his face a mixture of anger and embarrassment. You think you're so much better than us now with your fancy apartment and your big job? But I remember when you were just a skinny kid who couldn't throw a football to save his life. And I remember when you told me I'd never amount to anything, I replied calmly. Looks like one of us was wrong. They stormed out, Mom muttering about ingratitude and Dad avoiding eye contact. As I closed the door behind them, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. For the first time in my life, I'd stood up to them on my own terms, in my own home, from a position of strength. I poured myself a glass of bourbon and stood by the window, looking out at the city skyline. I had made it, despite them. No, because of them. Their lack of faith had been the fuel that drove me to prove them wrong. In a twisted way, I almost owed them thanks for being such terrible parents. Almost. The call started the next day. First Jake, then Mom again, then some aunt I barely remembered. They all had the same message. I needed to do the right thing and help the family out. Jake's call was particularly galling. Bro, I know we weren't close growing up, but this is important, he said, his voice that fake casual tone people use when they're trying to manipulate you. Melissa is the best thing that ever happened to me. Her family is connected, man. This could change everything for all of us. All of us? Or just you? I asked. Don't be like that. Look, I know Mom and Dad favored me growing up. I'm not blind. But that wasn't my fault, was it? The audacity of him acknowledging it so casually, as if it was just some minor family quirk and not something that had shaped my entire childhood, made my blood boil. You never once stood up for me, I reminded him. Not once. We were kids, Tommy. What was I supposed to do? You were supposed to be my brother, I said, and hung up. A week after my parents' visit, my work phone rang with a local number I didn't recognize. Is this Thomas Mitchell? A female voice asked when I answered. Yes, who's this? This is Melissa, Jake's fiancée. We haven't met, but I've heard so much about you. All bad, I'm sure, I replied dryly. She laughed, a practiced musical sound. No, actually, Jake says you're the smart one, the successful one. That's why I wanted to talk to you personally about our situation. Melissa, I've already told my parents. Your parents don't know I'm calling, she interrupted. Look, I'll be straight with you. This wedding is important for my family's standing in the community. My father is running for mayor next year, and everyone who matters will be at this wedding. It needs to be perfect, and you need my money to make it perfect, I said. I need your help to make sure your brother doesn't embarrass me, she corrected. The wedding is already paid for. Your parents took out a loan against their house. Then why did they ask me for money? There was a pause. Because they can't make the first payment. The loan has some aggressive terms. If they miss a payment, the interest rate doubles. Let me get this straight. They took a predatory loan they can't afford for a wedding they can't afford, and now that's somehow my problem. Family helps family, she said, as if reciting a line she'd been taught. That hasn't been my experience, I replied. Listen, her voice hardened. My father has connections. He could help your career if you help us. Or he could make things difficult. It's your choice. The threat was so unexpected I actually laughed. Did you just threaten my career over your wedding? I'm simply pointing out that actions have consequences, she said smoothly. Think about it. We need an answer by Friday. After she hung up, I sat back in my chair, stunned at the audacity. Then I started making calls of my own. First to my company's legal team to document the threat. Then to a private investigator I'd worked with on a corporate espionage case. Then to Uncle Rob. They did what? Uncle Rob exploded when I told him about the predatory loan and the threat. Yeah, and apparently future father-in-law has connections that could hurt my career, I said. Tommy, these people are toxic. You don't owe them anything. I know, I said. But I'm not just going to let this go. I think it's time for some consequences of their own. The PI's report came back within a week. Melissa's father, Richard Kensington, was indeed planning a mayoral run. He was also involved in some questionable real estate deals and had a sealed juvenile record. Jake had a history of being chronically late to work and was on thin ice at several jobs before finally getting fired. And the best part? The predatory loan came from a company where Kensington was a silent partner. So basically, he's setting up his own future son-in-law's family with a loan he knows they can't repay. I summarized to Uncle Rob over dinner. I'm guessing the plan is to take their house when they default. That's beyond sketchy. Uncle Rob shook his head. What are you going to do? I smiled. I'm going to do what I do best. Follow the data and see where it leads. Armed with this information, I set up a meeting with a reporter friend at the Philadelphia Inquirer who'd been looking for a breakthrough story. I didn't give him the information directly, but I pointed him in the right direction. You might want to look into predatory lending in small towns, I suggested, especially loans connected to political aspirations. Meanwhile, I hired the best financial forensic specialist I could find to look into the loan company. If they were giving predatory loans to my parents, they were doing it to others. The specialist confirmed my suspicions. The company had a pattern of targeting financially vulnerable families, especially those with connections to people Kensington wanted to influence. Then I waited, knowing that sometimes the best revenge is letting people destroy themselves while you watch from a safe distance. 2 weeks later, my plan started bearing fruit. The Inquirer ran a front-page expose on predatory lending targeting financially vulnerable families in small towns. They specifically highlighted the company that had given my parents their loan, tying it to Richard Kensington and questioning the ethics of a mayoral candidate profiting from such practices. The story got picked up by state news outlets and then national ones. Suddenly, Richard Kensington's mayoral aspirations were in serious jeopardy. The article didn't mention my parents specifically, but it detailed several cases similar to theirs, complete with quotes from financial experts about how these loans were designed to fail. My phone exploded with calls and texts from my parents and Jake, all of which I ignored. Then came an email from Melissa. Subject line, "You did this." The body of the email was surprisingly short. "I know you're behind this. You've ruined everything. My father knows people who can make your life very difficult." I didn't bother responding. Instead, I forwarded the email to my lawyer with a note. Add this to the file of threats from the Kensington family. Next, I contacted a consumer protection attorney and paid them to represent my parents in a predatory lending lawsuit against Kensington's company. Without telling my parents, I wanted to help them escape the loan, but I wasn't about to give them the satisfaction of knowing I was behind it. The attorney called them directly, explaining that they had been selected as potential plaintiffs in a class action suit against the predatory lender. All legal fees would be covered. They just needed to provide documentation about their loan. 2 days later, my mother called. "What did you do?" she demanded without preamble. "I have no idea what you're talking about," I replied calmly, leaning back in my office chair. "This lawyer called us about a lawsuit against Richard's company. Then Richard called Jake screaming about betrayal. The wedding is off, and it's somehow your fault." "That's unfortunate," I said. "But maybe Jake dodged a bullet. Melissa doesn't sound like someone who truly cared about him." "You ruined everything," Mom was crying now. "The loan company is threatening foreclosure. Jake lost his new job at Richard's office, and we have nowhere to turn." "That sounds like a series of consequences for poor decisions," I observed. "Please," her voice changed, becoming small and desperate. "Please help us, Tommy. We made mistakes. Terrible mistakes. With you. With everything. But we're going to lose the house. We'll be homeless." For a moment, I almost felt sorry for them. Almost. But then I remembered all those years of being treated like I was less than Jake, all those times they dismissed my dreams and abilities, all the support they had denied me while lavishing it on my brother. "I'll think about it," I said, and hung up. I did think about it. For a whole week, I thought about all the times they had dismissed me, belittled me, chosen Jake over me. I thought about how they had laughed at my dreams and refused to help me when I needed it most. I thought about the fact that they had only reached out when they needed something from me, not because they actually cared about my life or wanted to repair our relationship. But I also thought about something Uncle Rob had said when I first moved in with him. The best revenge isn't making others suffer. It's living well and being nothing like the people who hurt you. Then I made a decision. I called a real estate agent in my hometown and had them find a rental property, a modest 3-bedroom ranch house in a decent neighborhood. Nothing fancy, but comfortable and well maintained. I bought it outright through an LLC, ensuring my name wasn't on any paperwork. I wanted to help, but I didn't want them to have any legal claim on me or my assets. Then I called my parents. "I've thought about your situation," I said when my father answered. "I'm willing to help, but on my terms." The relief in his voice was palpable. "Anything, Tommy. We're desperate here. I've arranged for a place for you to live. It's not fancy, but it's better than being homeless. The address is 1472 Oakwood Drive. The keys will be in a lockbox on the door. Code is 1989. You bought us a house?" Dad sounded stunned, and I could hear my mother in the background asking what was happening. "I'm providing you with housing," I corrected. "There are conditions." "What conditions?" His voice immediately turned suspicious. "First, I want a full acknowledgement and apology from both you and Mom for how you treated me growing up and when I needed college help. Not just a quick sorry, but a real accounting of everything, written and in person. Tommy, that's in the past. Second," I continued as if he hadn't spoken, "Jake needs to get real help for his issues and find steady employment. Not through connections, but actual work." There was a long pause. "How did you know about his problems?" "I make it my business to know things now," I said. "Third, you and Mom will attend financial literacy classes that I'll arrange and pay for. And finally, you'll both do 100 hours of community service at the local library, the place that gave me sanctuary when home didn't." "This is humiliating," Dad protested. "More humiliating than losing your house? More humiliating than how you made me feel my entire childhood? More humiliating than having to beg me for money after telling me I'd never amount to anything?" The line went quiet. "Those are my terms," I said. "Take them or leave them." "We'll take them," he said quietly. "We don't have a choice." "No, you don't. Just like I didn't have a choice when I needed your help for college. The difference is, I'm actually offering you a way forward." 2 weeks later, I flew back to my hometown. My parents had moved into the rental house. When I pulled up in my rental car, they were waiting on the porch, looking older and defeated. Mom rushed down the steps and tried to hug me. I stepped back. "The apology first," I said. We sat in their new living room as they took turns acknowledging how they had favored Jake, dismissed my achievements, and refused to help with my education. Mom cried. Dad stared at the floor, his voice hollow. "We were wrong," Dad finally said, meeting my eyes. "You were the one with the real potential, and we were too blind to see it, too stuck in our old-fashioned ideas about success." After an uncomfortable dinner, I returned to my hotel. The next day, I visited Jake at his new job at a local tech repair shop. An ironic twist, considering how they dismissed my interest in computers. "Tommy," he said, his voice subdued, "you actually came." "I said I would help if you got real help," I replied. For the first time in our adult lives, we had a real conversation about growing up, and the pressure he felt to be the golden child. "You know what's ironic?" he said as our visit was ending. "You're the one who actually made something of yourself. Without help, without the constant praise. You just did it." Before I left town, I stopped by the rental house one more time. "I've made a decision," I told my parents. "I'm transferring ownership of this house to you. It will be yours, free and clear." They stared at me in shock. "But," I continued, "I want something in return." "Anything," Mom said quickly. "I want you to understand that this doesn't fix our relationship. I'm doing this so I can move on with my life without your situation hanging over me. I don't want your gratitude. I just want to be free of this cycle." "We understand," Dad said quietly. "Do you? Because here's what's going to happen. You're going to continue the financial classes and the community service because it's the right thing to do. You're going to support Jake's recovery, and you're going to accept that I may never want a close relationship with either of you." As I drove away from my hometown, I felt a strange lightness. Not forgiveness, I wasn't sure I'd ever truly forgive them, but something like closure. My phone buzzed with a text from Uncle Rob. "How'd it go?" I thought for a moment before replying, "I'm coming home. The real home." And I meant it. My life in Philadelphia, the career I'd built, the friends I'd made, that was my real home now. Not the past, not the grievances, not the childhood that had shaped but no longer defined me. Some bridges, once burned, should stay ashes. But from those ashes, I'd built something stronger, something entirely my own, and that was the sweetest revenge of all.